Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, Bradley Beal finally gone, waived, soon to be stretched, and the era is over. Final thoughts on the Suns' decision with Beal, and a look ahead to what comes next. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Thursday. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Just click that follow or subscribe button, do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We will hit on all of the angles of the Bradley Beal departure, plus thoughts from Wednesday's Summer League game where everybody played, and I was not expecting that at all, so a lot to get to there. But joining me to break it all down, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member, how are we feeling? Ben Garcia.
God, the divorce that took forever to get done is finally finalized. Beal, it feels like the one that took the bigger hit in the divorce, right? Because he gave up however many million, but I guess the Suns will be giving up 20 plus million over the next couple of years as well. So, see ya, Brad. Sorry it couldn't work out better than we all thought it might.
So, ultimately, Beal gives up 13.86, I think is the exact number, million.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, to make this possible, we've gone over it before because of the EJ Liddell and Nasir Little wave and stretches that the Suns previously did to make some other moves happen. They had a limit to how much dead money from Beal's contract that they were legally allowed to have on their books. He had to give some money back in order to make it all work out, and he gets a contract from the Clippers, which is the destination that had been in the rumor mill for a while now. Only basically the taxpayer mid-level or so. I mean, I don't think that's actually what it is because I'm not even sure if they're a tax team, but $5 million-ish, 2-year deal with the player option on that second season. Let's just start with that little part of the news and then zoom out, I think. Is it crazy that I was a little bit surprised that that's all he could get on this contract?
Well, no, man. And this is the thing that I kept on fighting with some other people about. I'm like, oh, he could get out and go get the full mid-level exception for multiple years. Bradley Beal, statistically, right? Good basketball player. If I'm not mistaken, like almost had a 50, 40, 90 season. Again, didn't play a ton of games. But that's my point, right? Bradley Beal is a good player to have, but he kind of is what he is. He's a microwave scorer. We're not sure if that's on the bench or in the starting lineup, and that right there is a problem in itself. Like, how much of an issue is this going to be if you're going to invest as much money as you are with a mid-level exception, potentially over multiple years? Is he a starter? Are you going to get stuck with him? Is that going to look like a bad contract a couple years from now? But it's the bigger thing. It's like, yes, Bradley Beal is a fine player when he plays. Not a good defender. And there's just like not a lot of places where that would work. The Bucks, I feel like they already went this route with Dame Lillard. Now, maybe they wanted to go down it again differently, but like that doesn't seem like it works. The Lakers, we saw that kind of floated out there. You're going to throw him out there with Luka, LeBron, and Ayton defensively? Like that's as bad as the Suns would have been defensively. So the Clippers made the most sense, and I think at that point, it's supply and demand.
Yeah, the health is definitely the reason that he probably got the deal that he did. I just thought, closer to the full mid-level for one season was kind of where I expected it to go, but ultimately he hasn't played away because he hasn't.
Sorry, I was just going to say he hasn't played 60 games in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons.
Yeah,
is he going to get more healthier?
It's always something. No, he's not. But so. He goes to the Clippers. He gets all of his money anyway, so that contract didn't really matter in the sake of his wallet. I just thought it was interesting from the standpoint of his value, but it obviously closes a chapter for this team. A pretty momentous one and a very disappointing one. We all obviously could admit the trade I supported at the time. I've gone over it. You and I both have. I've always distinguished it as mistake versus misguided. I think that the Beal trade was a mistake. I think that the DeAndre Ayton trade, I think the DeAndre Ayton trade was more misguided. You know, the intent with the Beal trade made sense. They didn't ultimately give up a huge amount, even though it was maybe more than people even expected Washington to get. And then once you just saw it on the court, it never worked out. What are your thoughts as we say goodbye to this kind of Big Three era and the Beal era here in the Valley?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I think the way you put it was really good because you mentioned at the beginning, I was for this. And so was I. I thought it was a slam dunk. Shamet, Chris Paul, bunch of first-round pick swaps that will likely never get exercised, and a bunch of second-round picks that like are currency in the NBA, but we saw the Suns just get 5 back in a KD deal along with players. Those can be had. What pisses me off is when people go after the Suns for doing this deal when they themselves wanted this deal done as well. And there's multiple accounts that I've looked up, just Bradley Beal on their account and went through the archives and like, oh, you were actually for this trade too. You loved this trade until it didn't work out for you. So it was a mistake at the end of the day. And I could say that too, although I was for it. In hindsight's 2020, probably a little too much redundancy in the offense. Shouldn't have looked over the fact that he doesn't play a lot of games. But I'm not going to condemn the Suns on this fact alone for trying, especially at the time with what they gave up for Beal. Didn't feel like a lot. And that Suns team, everyone forgets, man. Chris Paul felt like at that point, plays a little slower, feels like he started to wear out his welcome. Everyone hated Landry Shamet, and you gave up some picks that, yeah, man, it sucks. But I appreciate the swing. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out. I just wish more people would say that. I was for it. It didn't work out. It was a bad move. And I don't think a lot of people are being honest with the Bradley Beal saga.
Fair enough. He's gone no matter what any of us say at this point. I think that the part of it that I will say was misguided, that in hindsight probably was one of the reasons that it, not probably, it was one of the reasons that it failed, is not negotiating the no trade clause out of his contract upon his arrival here. That would have been, it was just overlooked at the time because you just assume it's going to, hey, he's just going to play. Why would you want to think about flipping a player the day you're getting him? It just wasn't part of the conversation. But given the relationship between the Suns front office and his agent, which is well documented with Josh Bartelstein working here, and the fact that, you know, the Suns were on his short list of teams. Obviously, he waived the no-trade clause to come here in the first place, all that sort of stuff. I think the Suns should have pushed harder for that and envision the fact that, hey, KD's pretty old. We have a small window here. Brad's contract's really long. We might need to get out of this sooner than we realize and give themselves more outs than they did. That was certainly a mistake. But, yeah, look, I think the final summation of what I would say on this is I think that Beal, you can't separate the injuries from the performance on the court because the deterioration of his body is what led to him not being able to be the player stylistically that the Suns needed him to be to fit with Devin Booker, to fit with Kevin Durant. He just lost the ability to drive and finish. He wasn't able to consistently defend, especially bigger players, which he needed to do in a, 3-guard lineup a lot of the time with Grayson Allen out there too. Things like that just, they never were there because physically he couldn't or didn't feel comfortable trying to do it. And that is the part of it where in hindsight, it's like we could have seen that coming. And that's maybe the biggest bummer of it.
Do you think the Suns are going to regret stretching and waiving Bradley Beal?
Yeah, well, that's the other part. I mean, what do you think? Because I think you switched over to the side of not wanting this to happen a little quicker than I did as the offseason progressed. So I feel like you're probably more negative on this being the final call on their part than I might be.
Well, let's see here. Here are the positives to moving off of Beal. There's a very good chance that maybe he was just a cancer in the locker room and, didn't get along with players or didn't get along with staff. And like, that's just a bad thing to have. Like, ultimately it feels like they were done with the Bradley Beal experience. So I get it from that aspect. And you don't have to struggle with the fact of like, you're either sending him home or you're sending him to the bench. So like, those things are good. And I'm not going to act like there are no positives to sending Bradley Beal out of here. I just think it outweighs the negatives, man. You're talking about $20 million, $19.6 million, whatever, a year until I'm 32 years old and I'm 27 now. Like, hopefully I have multiple kids at that point to where we're still talking about paying off Bradley Beal. And what's going to be frustrating, man, in 2 years from now, you and I are going to talk about some player being available. We're going to be like, man, wish we could get that guy, but we're paying Bradley Beal $20 million. I just don't, if I was for this, if there was a corresponding move that made sense for the Suns, even at least this year, but I don't think it's like a death note, right? I just think it's making something that was a big problem for the next 2 years, a slight to medium-sized issue over the next couple of years. That's where I'm at. I'm not making it a death note. I just don't get it completely. You?
I'll let you know what I think on the other side of the break, and we can kick off what we think is going to come next, because I think those things are connected. Like you said, the other shoe has not dropped after this decision for the Suns, and there may not be another shoe to drop. It may be a little bit of a longer-term outlook. So we'll get into what that could look like next. First, today's show is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. I had to pay my old apartment company way more money than I should have. Story for a different day. However, getting a hold of somebody, their phone line straight up went to busy if there wasn't somebody to pick up the call or they were closed. There was no answering machine. There was no wait or hold line or waiting list or anything. It was just dead air. Open Phone would have solved that. They probably should sign up for that, so at least I'm not angry at them while I'm paying them way too much money. But if you're a business owner, you know, hey, we're not going to do the angry part, but we can take care of our customers with Open Phone. So our listeners can get 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with a different service, Open Phone will port those over at no extra charge. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling. So you asked me right before the break what I think about their decision ultimately to go this direction and waive and stretch Beal instead of keeping him for 1 more season, 2 more seasons, whatever it could have looked like. I think that this is an example of the chickens coming home to roost, right? Like, you can kick the can down the road, to do a bunch of metaphors altogether, for so long. All the times over the past couple years, 3 off seasons, 2.5 years under Matt Ishbia, where we've said, that was a little risky. It was a little all in, but hey, I appreciate the aggressiveness, and if it pays off, we're not going to care. You do that for long enough, and you don't win games, and you end up being presented with a bunch of not great options, and you have to pick one of them. Obviously, there's an argument to the fact of saying, well, they didn't need to get under the second apron at all. If this is a lost season, why panic and do anything? But we know all the reasons why, because it's harder to build the next great Suns team with all those limitations. Matt Ishbia's luxury tax bill is getting multiplied and multiplied and multiplied every single season, and going under the tax resets all of that. So it helps to be ready to spend again when it's time to be another great Suns team. all of those things and the draft picks that get frozen and all that stuff. So if the Suns felt like part of resetting this roster post Big Three era was needing to get that financial relief, they had to pick the best of bad options, and that's what this was. And I can't necessarily hate that, but it's also not going to be the last one, I think, is what we also need to be ready for. Grayson Allen trade, Royce O'Neal trade, drafting after Devin Booker's prime, or if, heaven forbid, he's ever off the team. There's going to be a lot more of the paying back for all the stuff you did that was aggressive and win now. And I think this was, again, the first one of those.
That's interesting, man. So do you think do you think that those changes that you're saying, because we kind of talked this pre-show and you kind of told me like, oh, nothing really changed for me right now. But you mentioned like Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal. Do you think potentially we might see guys like that move this year? Or are you talking more down the line? This was the big hurdle and we did it this year instead of next year.
No, I'm just bringing those guys up as people we know aren't going to be on the team 5 years from now. I'm not saying, and yeah, we just know that they're going to probably be traded in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, you give Grayson Allen 4 years and $72 million because he has a great season and you're trying to go all in, and you're going to lose him for nothing if you don't give him a new contract, and nobody cares. But then all of a sudden you're trying to canvass the trade market for Grayson Allen deals and you go, hold on, no one wants him? That's what I'm saying. I'm just giving it as another example of there's a lot of stuff the Suns did when they were in win now mode that all of a sudden now in reset mode is a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow. And this Beal one is obviously the biggest example.
Okay, so we're in reset mode. So does that mean, is that it does change a little bit for me. I was expecting to some degree, whatever that may be, right? Shams Charania tweets out Bradley Beal's being bought out by the Phoenix Suns. He's going over to the Clippers. The Suns are also making a corresponding move by adding Grayson and Nick Richards for la player to help this year and then potentially in the future. That's not the case. So I think what leads me to this is I think the Suns are prepping themselves for something to come next year, and that they are planning, and they have the A-OK from Devin Booker, that maybe this is more of a transition year than we thought. Maybe this isn't as much of a show Devin Booker you're competent or you lose him next year, but they're actually for the first time playing the long game. That's actually where I'm starting to trend towards now.
I mean, it's being able to play any game. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything. So if they get to a situation where they need to, for instance, shed more salary for whatever reason, if they need to, clear up a roster spot, like just, hey, Grayson they just are not a fit here, they can make more types of trades to do that. If they want to go out and try to get a mid-level type role player that they find interesting, who's going to help them get back to relevance, they can actually get that player. If they want to trade a draft pick next summer for a superstar, they can actually do that. Like, they just couldn't do anything, and now they can do all the things like that. I think it's just that simple. I think as far as like in the short term, though, I don't think there's going to be anything else, is my view of it. I mean, they'll figure out whatever the last player for this team roster spot wise is going to be. They have the regular old non-taxpayer mid-level to use if they want it, but I don't think that they will, because they would go under over the first apron if they did. Okay. And no one's really out there that I think is even close to being worth that. And so I think it's just about, call it the long game. That's probably a good way to put it. It's just all the cards are back on the table.
Yeah, okay, so I'm good that you kind of steered it back to that direction, because I do want to say this, and it does lead me to believe this. You mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but I just want to bring back up the idea, so I don't want to make it like it's my original thought, but I think the Suns are still going to go big fish hunting. I just think it's next season. I don't think that it's nothing. I'm not saying Luka Doncic is going to come here, but I don't think it's nothing that Luka still hasn't signed that long-term extension with the Lakers, or Trae Young still hasn't gotten his extension from the Hawks, whatever it looks like next year, right? I think that maybe the NBA landscape is changing a little bit to where teams, like players, aren't necessarily interested in the supermax right now, whereas like they could wait another year, join a different team, get qualified for it, and get the supermax from them later on. I do think the Suns are looking at free agency next year and trying to lure a big star here. I think it is, and I think you are looking at the Trae Youngs, the Lukas, like one of those big guys. I don't know, man. That's crazy. But like maybe Giannis becomes available. I don't know how the Suns would do that. Jalen Green would have to have an insane year to make it happen. You'd have to have access to your picks. But
yeah, they're still really behind on any types of packages like that. But they, again, at least they can be in the running for anything like that, rather than begging Bradley Beal to waive his no trade clause, begging teams to take on, Nurkic to make it possible, or split up their pick 3 ways, just all the nonsense that they've had to pull. And they didn't even get Jimmy Butler for all of that, like at least this time it's just, they're going to be a normal team again.
I just think it's pretty clear the Suns are turning their attention to free agency next year, which is seen as a very big free agency class. Maybe they don't get one of the big stars, but maybe they get someone a little bit lower that they think can pan out to be more.
Well, and just to clarify, they're not going to have cap space unless they do a whole lot more, but they'll at least,
but you have flexibility.
They can do sign and trades.
Point.
They can do whatever.
There you go. That's my point. I'm not saying that they can outright. Thank you for saying that. People in the comment section are going to eat me alive. They cannot outright sign those people, but they have flexibility to do those things now. Combine contracts, move someone here. Maybe Jalen Green has a good year, and you could package him with someone else in a sign and trade or whatever it looks like. I just think that the Suns are turning their attention to that because a big trade doesn't really seem feasible even next year because you just don't have access to your picks like that. So, and because of Gambo keeps on shooting down guys, no to Ben Simmons, no to Brogdon, no to whatever. And it's like, okay, it's pretty clear they're bringing in some third string guy. Maybe it's Monte Morris to help with the duties, because it seems like they're turning their attention to next year and they have a verbal commitment from Booker. Like, I won't demand a trade next year. Let's just make this a transition year. And next year, maybe we can lure a big fish and then we'll figure it out. I think that's the plan. I don't think it's something else in the short term for now.
Yeah. One other quick thing to just specify is they did not unfreeze their draft pick for 2032 by doing, 2032 by doing
this. You have to be under it for 3 years?
Yeah, 3 out of the next 4 seasons, they have to be under the second apron in order for that to be come back to them and not be sent to the back of the first round and everything, which, as far as things look right now, they're way in the clear of having that happen. I also am not fully on board with what you said of that they have an official comment from Devin Booker, but I don't think they're wrong to just operate like he's going to be here for the long haul because he's never said anything contrary. So,
also, he can't just leave anymore. You got him for multiple years.
Well, yeah. I mean, he already had, 2 years, 3? And now he has...
I think like any Devin Booker trade, I don't mean to make it a Devin Booker thing, but any Devin Booker trade, I don't think, like, if Booker wanted out next year and the Suns didn't want to move him, I don't think Booker would ever make it so ugly here because he has such a goodwill with the fan base that he would just tarnish all that. But it would have to be together, and I just think that maybe they're operating off of that. But yeah.
And I don't think Ishbia is the type of person to ever be complacent. So it's not like they're just going to say, all right, Book, we got Book forever, no big deal, keep going, business as usual. He's going to push. And I think as long as the moves generally point in the right direction and things are trending upward, there's no reason to think Book won't be along for that ride. But they just have to, a lot of these things still do have to work. Like, we like the idea of them, but these players have to hit, and the identity has to look right, and Ott has to be a good hire, and all those sorts of things. But the Beal move is one last bow tied on top of this offseason that I think a lot of Suns fans are feeling very good about. Those players did play Wednesday. We saw them one more time at Summer League against the Minnesota Timberwolves Las Vegas squad, and it was another one with a lot of lessons for all those young players. So we'll dive into those next. First, today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I have felt like for a while, I'm like, do I need to be investing money somehow, somewhere? I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know how much. I don't even know what I would be shooting for. It just feels like the right thing to do. But I also don't want to not be able to afford things I'm saving to. Like, it's all chaotic. It's all confusing. But Monarch Money helps you track all of it. They're not going to tell you what to do, but they're at least going to help you figure it out and know what's going on when you make those moves. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, let's close it out with some Summer League thoughts, Ben. We've got the final, correct, Summer League game for the Phoenix Suns. 89-85 loss, but obviously, who cares about the result of the game? Everybody played. Rasheer Fleming was back. Well, no Kobe Brea was the one. He has a sprained left thumb. Shouldn't be anything too serious. But Maluach, Oso, Dunn, and Fleming all played as far as the main guys are concerned. What was your biggest takeaway from the game, Ben?
I was muted there. My biggest takeaway is Oso Ighodaro continues to look pretty good and more confident, especially getting to the rim. You know, the other day you asked me, like, what do you mean by he's more athletic and why he seems more athletic? Not that he just grew up and figured it out, but like more confident getting to the rim. And I think ultimately, if Oso is going to be a contributor to this team, especially offensively, it's going to happen in the paint. It's going to be doing the nitty gritty stuff. It's going to be getting offensive rebounds, being the hustle guy. So he continues to open his eyes. He continues to open my eyes to me of him being a solid player offensively that can make a living down low, grab an offensive board, put it back in, as well as get to the rim. And that makes things a little bit more interesting with Khaman Maluach. Maybe, granted, he hasn't been a great three-point shooter, but he hit 2 of them today. Maybe there's this idea to space it out a little bit and have Oso play a little bit more. That was my biggest takeaway. What about you?
Weird that Oso was 3 of 10 from the free throw line. That was a little scary. And Dunn 1 of 4. You know, that needs to keep going.
They missed a lot
right
of free throws
direction.
together as a team.
Yeah, they were below 50% because
Yeah.
Maluach was 2 of 6. Yeah, I think my big takeaway, like just continuing to get my arms and mind around what Maluach is going to be, right? I think that with him, I kept kind of wondering today because all but one of his field goal attempts were threes. I came away feeling like I would have liked to see him around the basket more. Like it went from wow that he could shoot like on literally less than a week ago to today I was like, okay, well Summer League's over and I feel like he didn't get a lot of reps doing the actual main thing that a big man does. So I wonder if that's because they're nervous about the turnovers and, you know, Summer League's just kind of a crappy environment and they didn't have a great point guard to run things, or they just kind of the way the cookie crumbled. Maybe it wasn't intentional at all. I'm not sure why it played out that way. Maybe he's just a little nervous about, you know, NBA physicality and athleticism. Not nervous like scared, but just nervous like feeling it out. I don't know, but I probably half or more of his shots in Vegas were threes. And I don't think that's going to be what it's like in the NBA for him, or at least I don't think it should be. So I don't know what to think of this performance overall for him at Summer League.
Well, one of the things that you had mentioned is the fact that he didn't really live around the rim. I don't think he caught one lob. I don't think he caught one singular lob all Summer League because they had one thrown to him late in this game. And I thought about it right away. And I was like, wait a second, this guy wasn't used as a lob threat once. And that's what like I talked about with him coming out of Duke is the fact that he's going to be able to catch lobs from Devin Booker, like show off some of that athleticism. I'm leaning into it more of like the Suns have a plan to use him potentially. They had a plan with Yusuf Nurkic to use him as a stretch 5. That didn't work out. But the same kind of plan with Nurkic that they have with Maluach. So I think that maybe they want to see early in the season if this can work. They feel comfortable with him down low, footwork, kind of the Hakeem shot over players, almost like a hook shot, actually. Shot over players and try to do that. Kareem. The Kareem hook shot.
I didn't
over players.
see a dream shake from Khaman Maluach.
No,
that's the
no.
If he was busting those out, I'd be thinking there's an MVP.
Well, that was the thing, is we didn't see a lot of that. So I wonder if they feel so confident with him down low banging bodies that they were like, "Hey man, just shoot a bunch of threes. Like we want to see what we got from you here."
Yeah, but
and like to be fair, the shot doesn't
confident
fine.
About that because Duke.
I'm
that's
not saying
how he was used at Duke. Really, like
I am
he didn't
not
really
saying,
post up. Yeah, no, I don't think you're saying that, but I'm just playing out the possibility that was their mindset on him this summer, and I just don't think that's accurate. I probably the most likely, or I don't think that's smart, I guess, but like I think probably the most likely answer for it on the Maluach side is it probably was him. I think it's not like he wasn't around the basket. He just didn't really take shots there. I do think that the turnovers, catching the ball, gathering himself, and finishing, that's going to be a work in progress. That was a weakness of his with the Blue Devils, and no one really posts up in 2025 unless you're elite at it. So I don't know how much that's really going to be a thing unless there's a switch or a transition opportunity, some of the easy ones where you just say, okay, that dude's 7'2", let's just make the right play here. But I don't think it's crazy to say that there's not a part of his interior game that you necessarily love right now. But I also Miles Turner, Joel Embiid, even guys who can shoot threes that are his height didn't come into the league bombing like that. That's a risky player development strategy to go outside in with a behemoth of a center. That I don't know if I love that, if that's where this is going.
Okay, I agree. I just so we're clear, I agree with you in all that sense. However, those players didn't come into the NBA that was bombs away shooting threes. It was starting to take shape. That 2016, 2017, 2018 Warriors was starting to take shape, but it didn't really get into its full final form until, like, I would say, like the 2019, 2020 years. And so Maluach is coming into the fully formed, we're going to chuck in a bunch of threes, and maybe that's what would have happened with those two guys. However, I agree with you.
Example would be Wemby, right? Wemby did come into the NBA shooting threes because
he's still shooting a ton of threes
in a league where that was more valuable and more prioritized.
What I would say is, I would agree with you with all that. I don't think it's a great plan because he's 18, because he hasn't been playing for that long. However, that's what I think that the Suns are doing. I think they want to see if there's any world where he could be the stretch 5, because all you and I have talked about ad nauseum before the draft was they want to add a stretch 5. They want to add a stretch 5. They want to add a stretch 5. Well, Gambo says they're going to add a guard with that final roster spot. It leads me to believe that they think this guy could be a stretch 5. I don't love that because he's 7'2".
Like, what's the hurry though? That's the part of it.
Why do you feel like you need it? Like, it's not a necessity. It's a necessity to have if you're trying to win a championship. Al Horford, Kristaps,
not if you're just in year one of a reset.
No,
with an 18-year-old.
It feels like and so you use the right words. What's the rush? I don't know what it is, man. I don't really understand it. But maybe Jordan got an idea.
Which is why I brought up it might not be the team. It might be Maluach. And if that's the case, then I'm actually worried
to get in
his ear.
Maluach.
You need to get in his ear and say, like, that's not how you're going to play.
If it's Maluach, that actually worries me. I don't think it is. I don't think a big man who didn't shoot 6 threes a night with Duke would come in and start shooting 6 threes a night in the NBA. I can't buy that. But if it is, that's worrisome, because that means that's a player that's timid and doesn't think they could bang bodies down low and get buckets. That is worrisome.
Or again, the last possibility, just talking it out, is they had pretty crappy playmaking point guards because it's summer league and those guys they're not exactly a dime a dozen to just say, hey, we'll just get our version of Ja Morant to come out there and play with our summer guys. Like, that's not a thing. So you got to just make the best of what you have. And if he didn't necessarily have the chemistry and the comfort, and he missed a game, and I'm not gonna be working out the kinks of the technicalities of the pick and roll with Boogie Ellis, because that's not useful. I guess I could understand that too. And those guys, they're not elite passers to set him up and put him in position, even though Collins had 9 assists today and they played decently.
The only rebuttal I'll have to that, and I know this isn't you making this case, this is me saying 95% of the summer league doesn't have a quality guard that they feel like they can get the ball to the bigs where they want it to happen. So like, it's not really an excuse, but I get it being an excuse. Like, you do need to kind of adapt on the fly a little bit. You're the 10th overall pick. That's my point.
The other side, Baron J did the same thing. 2 of 7. I mean, he's not bombing threes, but he's kind of sucked. Like, all you're looking for is like the little spurt. Like, bigs just don't play well in this environment. Wemby was bad. It's just tough.
Are you that is true. Cooper Flag 6'9" looked bad in his first game until they put the ball in his hands, and he did actually he only looked bad scoring the basketball.
Basically a point guard.
Yeah, he only looked bad scoring the basketball. Until he became the point guard in that second game, and they gave him the ball and gave him the keys to do everything. He looked pretty good. Oh, you're not gonna do that Maluach, but like, again, not panicking. Let's wait and see what happens. No. I think, especially if the dude isn't playing in or we'll see how he plays in preseason, but I think it's more so like, we'll see if the dude is playing come opening night. But for now, whatever. I think the bigger bigger concerns was the fact that Ryan Dunn, I thought for a second, shattered his knee out there. Went Bradley Beal style, faked an injury. Well, he didn't fake it, but he made it seem like it was worse than it was. And then they put him back out there. What the hell was that?
So, I don't know what that was. It was not necessary. But Dunn also, like, how many times did that happen last year where his ankle would look like it was ripped to shreds, and then he pops up, or he misses the rest of one game and then he's starting again next night.
I thought his knee,
just how he is.
I actually was super worried because it was one of those things where he came down on his foot. I'm sorry. Yeah. He just came down with 2 feet, and like, he immediately goes to the ground. I'm like, oh God, no, that's an ACL. Like, that's an ACL or an MCL.
That's what I thought too, unfortunately. I don't want to.
It was neither thing. He waved him off. And then they said, get off. And then I guess he was fine. Then he continued playing for some godforsaken reason.
Stretching bands when they cut to him on the sideline. Apparently that's all he needed.
Which is good. Thank God.
Well, all I will say is maybe the Suns are smart to add a guard with that final roster spot based on the need that all these young dudes had for a competent point guard here in Summer League. And
not a fan of Yuri. All right.
Colin Gillespie, Jalen Green, Devin Booker can only do so much when none of those guys are like pure point guards either. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Become an everydayer. We got one more show for you tomorrow with some news that we need to catch up on. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll catch you tomorrow.